Penguins. When you hear that word, what comes to mind? Probably a flock of black and white birds waddling across a vast frozen landscape. Snow blowing, icebergs floating by, the harsh, beautiful wilderness of Antarctica. But what if I told you that's only a tiny part of their story? What if there are penguins living on the hot, rocky coasts of Africa? Or in the lush, green islands of New Zealand? What if the real story of penguins is far more surprising than anything we've seen in cartoons or nature documentaries? These birds, dressed in their elegant tuxedos, are creatures built for a life on the edge, caught between two worlds, the sky they left behind and the ocean that became their true kingdom. So why did they give up flying? How did they learn to survive in some of the most extreme environments on Earth? And are they really the clumsy, comical animals we love in memes and movies? Today, we're diving deep into the world of penguins. We'll explore their incredible evolutionary history, their mind-blowing anatomy, and their brilliant survival strategies. We'll see how the fate of these birds is deeply connected to the history of our own planet. This is a story about evolution, epic ocean journeys, and why a penguin standing on a hot, sunny beach isn't nearly as strange as it sounds. So, what exactly is a penguin? You might think the answer is obvious, but it's more complex than you'd expect. Biologically, penguins are birds. Just like sparrows, eagles, or ducks, they have feathers, they lay eggs, and they belong to the avian family tree. But when you look at them, it feels like you're seeing something else entirely, as if they took a completely different path. And they did. These are birds that made a radical choice. They abandoned the sky and conquered the water. It's one of the most dramatic adaptations ever seen in a vertebrate. Picture this: millions of years ago, the ancestors of modern penguins could still fly. They soared through the air alongside other seabirds. But evolution is relentlessly practical. If a trait is no longer an advantage, it eventually fades away. For penguins, flight became less useful than being an expert swimmer. The ocean was full of food, but catching it required a totally different body plan than soaring through the air. And so the transformation began. Their wings, once built for flight, became powerful paddle-like flippers. Their bones, which are light and hollow in most birds to save weight, became dense and heavy. This allowed them to dive deep, instead of just bobbing on the surface like a cork. Their entire body was reshaped into a hydrodynamic torpedo, perfectly streamlined to cut through the water with incredible speed. Today, penguins can't fly through the air, but you could say they fly underwater. Their movements are almost identical to those of a bird in flight, just in a much denser medium. It wasn't a loss, it was a trade. And it was a trade so successful that penguins became some of the best swimmers on the planet. But adapting to the water wasn't just about changing their wings. Take their feathers. From a distance, a penguin's coat looks like smooth, dark fur. But up close, it's a dense, overlapping layer of tiny feathers that create an almost completely waterproof barrier. These feathers trap a layer of air right next to their skin, which acts as natural thermal insulation. This is what allows them to swim in freezing water without losing body heat, while still being incredibly agile. Then there's their metabolism. Penguins often live in brutally cold climates, sometimes facing the total darkness of an Antarctic winter. To survive, their bodies have to be furnaces, generating a huge amount of heat and storing energy with maximum efficiency. Under their skin, they have a thick layer of blubber that insulates them and provides fuel during long fasting periods. Many species can go for weeks without eating, relying solely on these fat reserves. But maybe the most amazing adaptation is how penguins handle breathing. They aren't fish, they have to come up for air. Yet some species can dive hundreds of feet deep and stay underwater for over 10 minutes on a single breath. How? Their muscles are packed with a protein called myoglobin, which stores oxygen and releases it slowly during a dive. It's like having a built-in oxygen tank. This allows them to temporarily shut down non-essential body functions and enter an energy-saving mode. Even their vision is tailored for an aquatic life. You might think their eyes are designed for land, but they're actually optimized for seeing underwater. Their lenses are specially adapted to how light bends in water, making them phenomenal hunters beneath the surface. On land, their vision is often less sharp. In so many ways, they are creatures of the ocean first and land second, even though their life begins on shore with eggs and chicks. So penguins are birds that completely redefine what it means to be a bird. They don't fly, they swim like torpedoes. They don't have wings. They have biological flippers. They didn't conquer the sky. They conquered the sea, becoming some of the most specialized aquatic hunters on Earth, while still, technically, being birds. They are a stunning testament to the creativity of evolution, which is constantly experimenting and reshaping life in the most unexpected ways. And this is just the beginning of their story. If a penguin is a bird that stopped flying, the next questions are, when, where, and why did it happen? What major event in Earth's history pushed these creatures to trade the open sky for the icy ocean? And how did that one decision shape everything that followed? When we compare a penguin to a typical bird, the differences seem almost drastic. But they all come from one fundamental fact. Penguin evolution followed a completely different path. If the traditional bird is a child of the sky, the penguin is a creature raised by the ocean. And it was the ocean that imposed entirely new biological demands, reshaping their wings, feathers, bones, and entire physiology. Let's start with the most obvious feature: wings. In most birds, wings are light, long, and equipped with feathers designed for flight. Every feather acts like a miniature airfoil that captures air and creates lift. The bones in their wings are hollow and lightweight, a natural aircraft frame built not to weigh the body down. In penguins, everything is the opposite. Their wings became stiff, short flippers, incapable of lifting them in the air but perfect for swimming underwater. They were not lifting surfaces, they were biological paddles designed for movement in a medium more than 800 times denser than air. Instead of light, hollow bones, penguins have bones that are dense and heavy, making it easier for them to dive rather than float. Looking at feathers reveals another revolutionary compromise. Flight feathers in airborne birds are lightweight, often loosely arranged, allowing air to flow and create lift. In penguins, every millimeter of their body is covered with short, tightly packed feathers that form a shield against water and cold. For an ordinary bird, contact with freezing water would be disastrous. Soaked feathers lose insulation and trap cold. Penguins turn their feathers into thermal armor. Air trapped between the feathers acts as insulation, and the feathers themselves are coated with an oily substance from their preen gland. That's why a penguin can plunge into water colder than freezing and still maintain a stable body temperature. Differences appear in their entire body shape as well. Flying birds are lightweight. Their silhouettes resemble aerodynamic gliders designed to ride the air. A penguin is a torpedo, a maximally streamlined body that eliminates drag in water. The chest muscles that power downward wing strokes in flying birds were reshaped in penguins to generate thrust underwater. That's why a penguin in the ocean moves with stunning grace and speed, reaching up to 25 miles per hour, while on land it looks awkward, wobbling as if every step requires effort. Even their breathing shows how different their evolutionary path was. A typical bird has a high-efficiency respiratory system suited for flight, but penguins needed something else: endurance and oxygen control during deep dives. Their muscles contain high levels of myoglobin that store oxygen, allowing them to survive without breathing for long stretches, a strategy that flying birds simply don't need. Differences extend to the legs as well. Most birds use their legs primarily for walking or landing. Penguins' legs are set far back on their body, giving them their upright posture. In the water, these legs act as a rudder and stabilizer. On land, well, they make for that adorable waddling walk. But it's worth remembering, penguins weren't built for land. It's only their nesting and resting zone. Everything else happens in the ocean. When we zoom out, the differences between penguins and flying birds reveal how incredibly flexible nature can be. The same basic blueprint, bird, was reshaped into an organism capable of diving hundreds of meters deep and surviving in brutally cold habitats. Penguins aren't a different class of animals. They're the same lineage, just adapted to a completely different reality. They didn't lose the ability to fly by accident, they traded it for something far more valuable in the world they chose. And yet the question remains, if penguins are so perfectly adapted to life in the water, why do they even bother coming onto land? And what made the loss of flight an advantage rather than a disaster? When we think penguin, most of us instantly picture snowy Antarctic landscapes, frozen oceans, and those panoramic shots of thousands of birds standing stoically in the wind. And it's true, Antarctica is home to the largest and most famous species, like the emperor and gentoo penguins. But the real distribution of penguins across the planet is far more surprising than what nature documentaries or pop culture suggest. Because penguins don't just live in frozen deserts. Some call the rocky coasts of Africa home, others thrive among the Green islands of New Zealand and a few even live in places where the temperature has nothing in common with the icy pole. To understand this unusual spread, you have to look at a map and remember one key fact. Penguins live exclusively in the southern hemisphere. Their range stretches from the frozen continent at the bottom of the world to much warmer, even tropical regions. The greatest species diversity is found in the sub-Antarctic zone, those islands encircling Antarctica where frigid waters meet a slightly milder climate. That's where penguins evolved for millions of years, taking advantage of the rich food supplies brought in by cold, nutrient-dense ocean currents. But once you turn your gaze toward Africa, the story shifts dramatically. The African penguin lives on the southern coast, where temperatures can reach well into the 80s or 90s, and the only snow they ever see is on TV. How do they survive in that heat? The answer lies in the ocean. Cold currents like the Benguela Current create perfect conditions for marine life and guarantee penguins an abundant food supply. It is not air temperature that decides where penguins can live, it's water temperature and access to fish. South America tells an even richer story. From Patagonia all the way to Peru, you'll find multiple species, some in temperate zones, others in the tropics. In New Zealand and Australia, penguins inhabit everything from cool southern shores to mild, sunny bays, proving they're far more adaptable than stereotypes imply. And then there's the most astonishing example, the Galapagos penguin, living just a few degrees from the equator, surrounded by black volcanic rock and blazing tropical sun. It's the northernmost penguin species on Earth, a true rule breaker. All of this shatters the popular myth that penguins need cold to survive. What they really need is a rich ocean, and that can exist both near icy continent edges and in warm waters, so long as strong marine currents bring nutrients to the surface. The ocean is their true home. Land is simply a pit stop, a nursery where they lay eggs and raise their chicks. It's important to note that penguins living in warmer regions are especially vulnerable to climate change. As ocean temperatures rise, fish and krill move, disappear, or shift their migration routes. Some penguin populations, like African penguins, are already fighting for survival as their habitats face pressure from climate shifts and human activity. So penguins live in a world far more diverse than pop culture gives them credit for. They're not prisoners of ice or mascots of eternal frost. They're citizens of the Southern Ocean, flexible, adaptive, shaped by their environment. And this geographical spread is key to understanding their evolution, their survival strategies, and the challenges they face today. The real question isn't just where they live, but how those environments molded them and how long they'll be able to withstand the changes ahead. If you imagine penguins as one fairly uniform group of birds, it's time to completely rethink that picture. The penguin family includes more than a dozen species, differing in size, looks, habitat, behavior, and even lifestyle. There are towering giants over 4 feet tall, and tiny, quick blue penguins no bigger than a large duck. It's one of the most fascinating spreads of diversity among water-adapted birds, even though most people can name only 1 or 2 kinds. When you think of a penguin, what's the first image that comes to mind? Probably a large, stately bird waddling across the Antarctic ice, right? That's most likely the emperor penguin, the heavyweight champion of the penguin world. An adult can weigh more than 90 pounds, and it survives in the harshest environment on Earth. It's the emperor that performs that legendary winter march across Antarctica to reach its breeding grounds. The males endure weeks of fasting, balancing a single precious egg on their feet while the females head out to sea. No other bird shows such extreme, dramatic survival behavior. But the emperor is just one chapter in the incredible story of penguins. Just behind them in size is the king penguin. Though smaller than the emperor, it has a similar elegant look, with vivid orange accents on its head and neck. But kings live mostly on sub-Antarctic islands, not Antarctica itself. Their colonies can number in the hundreds of thousands, and their lives follow the rhythm of oceanic migration more than the brutal stillness of polar winter. Then you have a really lively group, the crested penguins. These are the species sporting those distinctive golden eyebrows or feathered crests. This group includes rockhopper, macaroni, and fiordland penguins. Though they all share a similar flashy look, they differ in crest length, color, and nesting sites. They're noisy, energetic, often feisty birds whose colonies are chaotic, loud, and full of constant drama, a far cry from the calm dignity we often associate with penguins. You can also spot wide-eyed species like the Adelie penguin. They have an unmistakable white ring around their eyes, a feature that makes them easy to identify even from a distance. While they're closely tied to Antarctic sea ice, they don't follow as extreme a breeding strategy as emperors. They prefer more accessible coastal areas. And then there are the smallest of all, the little penguin, often called the little blue penguin, thanks to its bluish feathers. Standing just 12 inches tall and weighing only a few pounds, it lives in Australia and New Zealand. Its life seems much gentler than that of its massive polar cousins, a perfect example of how penguins can thrive in climates far warmer than frozen southern deserts. These differences go way beyond just size and color. Each species has its own unique behavior, its own breeding strategy, and its own preferred environment. Some nest on isolated sub-Antarctic islands. Others cling to rocky coasts near glaciers. Still, others choose warm, sandy shores. Their hunting strategies differ, their social interactions differ, and their responses to climate change vary widely. Every species is its own story, its own solution to the challenges of the ocean, temperature, and food supply. This impressive diversity shows just how widely penguins have spread across the southern hemisphere, and how flexible their evolutionary lineage really is. They're not just a group bound to Antarctic ice, but an entire dynasty of specialized ocean birds. Once we understand the differences between species, it becomes much clearer why some are thriving while others are hanging on by a thread. A penguin is a masterpiece of biological engineering when it comes to life underwater. Its body looks like something designed by a hydrodynamics specialist. Everything from its shape to the microstructure of its feathers serves one purpose: to move through the ocean fast, efficiently, and with as little wasted energy as possible. The sleek body shape is the most obvious feature. Penguins have no unnecessary protrusions that would increase drag. Their silhouette narrows toward the back, blending the head, torso, and tail into one smooth contour. When they dive, water slides around them effortlessly. This streamlined torpedo design is the result of millions of years of evolution, optimizing penguins for speed and efficiency in a water world. Their wings act as underwater engines completely different from the wings of flying birds. In the air, wings must be light and flexible. In water, they need to be stiff and powerful. Penguin wings evolved into flippers made of strong bones and dense muscles. Every stroke gives a burst of acceleration, and the rapid rotation makes them feel like miniature propellers. With these flippers, penguins can pivot in a fraction of a second, a crucial skill when hunting fast-moving fish. Penguin feathers don't look like the typical feathers of flying birds. They're tiny, extremely dense, and behave like overlapping scales. They form a watertight shield that traps a thin layer of air against the skin. That trapped air is a thermal suit, keeping the bird warm even in freezing water. On top of that, the feathers are coated in an oily secretion that makes them hydrophobic. Water just slides right off. So when a penguin emerges from the ocean, it's never truly soaked. Beneath the skin lies a thick layer of fat. It's both an energy reserve and an insulator, helping penguins survive long fasting periods during breeding seasons when they can't hunt regularly. In their true element, underwater penguins move like precision machines. They're fast, agile, and capable of maneuvers that seem to defy physics. But then they climb onto land and suddenly look like someone who can decide whether they be a bird or a wobbling, upright seal. Their hind limbs sit far back on their body, perfect for steering underwater but awkward for walking. So on land, penguins wobble, shuffle, and waddle as if every step takes thought. But this clumsiness is misleading. It's simply the side effect of an evolutionary trade-off. They spend only a tiny fraction of their lives on land, resting, laying eggs, and raising chicks. Everything else happens where their bodies function with surgical precision, beneath the waves. The ocean is their kingdom. The shore is just a brief intermission between dives. And that contrast, masterful underwater athletes versus awkward land dwellers, is what makes penguins feel like two different creatures living inside one body. A penguin's real life begins the moment it sinks below the surface. That's where everything essential happens. Hunting, escaping predators, even part of their communication. The ocean isn't just their habitat, it's their world, while land is only a necessary pause. One of the most impressive feats penguins achieve underwater is speed. Some species can reach over 20 miles per hour. The fastest, like Gen 2 penguins, can exceed 35 miles per hour. That's faster than many fish. The secret lies in how they move their flippers. While most birds flap downward only, Penguins rotate their flippers in full arcs, as if they're drilling through the water. This creates thrust in multiple directions, allowing for both speed and explosive agility, an essential combination for a predator. Their famous porpoising jumps are just as remarkable. A penguin accelerates just below the surface, then bursts upward and rockets into the air like a launched torpedo. Porpoising lets them travel quickly near the surface while taking breaths without slowing down, a clever trick for long-distance swimming. But their dives are even more spectacular. Galapagos penguins, small and lightweight, descend only a modest few dozen meters. But the emperor penguin can reach depths of over 500 meters, with record measurements suggesting even deeper excursions. At such depths, the pressure is immense, yet the penguin's body handles it with surprising ease. This is possible thanks to the unique structure of their lungs and muscles. During a dive, their lungs don't retain air, they collapse, reducing the risk of decompression sickness, while oxygen is stored in their muscles and blood. Deep dives allow penguins to hunt fish, krill, and squid living in the dark, cold waters where sunlight barely penetrates. The deeper a species can dive, the greater its advantage in competing for food. The ocean also dictates the rhythm of a penguin's day. They don't swim for fun, most of their time in the water is spent in intense hunting. Penguins can remain at sea for hours, diving repeatedly like machines programmed to collect calories. They have to because their energy demands are enormous, especially in cold waters where they burn a lot of energy just to stay warm. And we can't forget that the ocean is full of danger. Underwater, penguins have to watch for leopard seals, orcas, and sharks. This is why speed and agility are a matter of life and death. Evolution has equipped penguins with extremely fast reflexes, allowing them to react instantly and perform razor-sharp maneuvers. So when we see a group of penguins racing underwater, we're not watching cute animals, we're watching perfect predators, specialists of the marine realm. On land they may look comical, but beneath the waves they are among the most impressive hunters in the ocean. And it's there, out of our sight, that the most important part of their lives unfolds, essential for understanding who they truly are. Have you ever wondered what goes on inside the mind of a penguin? We often see them as clumsy waddling birds in tuxedos, but in the water, they transform into something else entirely. They become masters of the hunt, finely tuned predators in a world of ice and shadow. Let us dive deep into the secret life of penguins and uncover how they survive in one of the most brutal environments on Earth, hunting. For a penguin is a genuine art, and every single dive is a precisely planned operation. Unlike predators on land that rely on sight or smell, penguins hunt where light vanishes quickly, sound behaves strangely, and prey is scattered and always on the move. Over millions of years, they've developed a toolkit that makes them incredibly efficient. Their strategy is a masterclass in speed and patience. Penguins don't chase their prey endlessly. Instead, they perform a series of lightning-fast strikes. Many species hunt together in coordinated groups, attacking schools of small fish. By working as a team, they herd the fish just like shepherds, forcing them into tight, panicked balls. Then the feast begins. Each penguin darts in, snaps up a fish, and swallows it whole on the spot. There's no time for chewing. Their throats are specially adapted to swallow even surprisingly large fish in an instant, allowing them to get right back into the action, but some penguins prefer to go it alone. The emperor penguin, for example, dives to extreme depths where it must rely entirely on itself. Down there, in the crushing darkness, its opponent isn't just krill or squid, it's the absence of light itself. Almost no sunlight reaches these depths, so emperor penguins have evolved eyes specialized for dim environments. Their retinas are packed with a high density of rod cells, allowing them to detect the faintest glimmers of light. In the twilight of the deep ocean, they can see far better than we can on a dark night. Vision is crucial, but it's not their only superpower. Underwater, a penguin can't rely on smell. Odor particles just don't travel the same way in water. This is where touch and spatial awareness become vital. A penguin's feathers aren't just for insulation. They act like a network of sensory antennae, detecting subtle changes in water flow. When a fish swims nearby, even if the penguin can't see it, it can feel the disturbance in the water and pivot in a split second. Their hearing is also surprisingly effective underwater. A penguin's body conducts sound differently than ours, and its ears are adapted to handle intense pressure. Research suggests that penguins can detect the low-frequency sounds made by moving schools of fish. They can even use the echoes of underwater sound waves to orient themselves. It's not as precise as a dolphin's sonar, but it's more than enough to give them a critical edge in the hunt. Another remarkable aspect is how efficiently penguins manage their energy. When food is plentiful near the surface, they perform rapid, short dives, returning again and again. But when food is scarce or deep, they switch to longer, slower dives. They enter a true battery-saving mode, lowering their metabolism and conserving precious oxygen. It's a physiological marvel that pushes their bodies to the absolute limit of efficiency. Hunting techniques also vary a lot between species. Penguins from warmer regions, like those in Africa or the Galapagos, are masters of agility. They can't withstand extreme cold, but they excel at dodging predators in crowded waters with rapid maneuvers near the surface. Meanwhile, Antarctic penguins have found a unique niche. They exploit the massive krill populations that feed on algae growing beneath the sea ice. They often slip under vast ice sheets into a world where krill gathers near the edges, a food source accessible only to creatures as cold-adapted as they are. The more we study them, the clearer it becomes. These aren't just amusing birds. They are highly specialized hunting machines. Every single movement they make underwater is the result of millions of years of evolutionary refinement, all focused on one mission: to survive in an ocean full of competition. And although they may seem awkward on land, in the water, they are undisputed rulers of their domain, small but relentlessly effective predators. So what's on the menu for these master hunters? At first glance, a penguin's diet seems simple: fish, krill, and the occasional squid. But behind that simplicity lies a complex story of evolution, climate, and the very functioning of the entire Antarctic ecosystem. What a penguin eats truly depends on where it lives, how deep it can dive, and what prey is available. The most iconic food source, of course, is krill. These tiny, shrimp-like crustaceans swarm in unimaginable numbers in the Antarctic waters. A single swarm can stretch for kilometers, forming the foundation of the entire Southern Ocean food web. Penguins, whales, seals, and fish all depend on it. Without krill, life as we know it in the Southern Hemisphere would look completely different. Penguins living closest to the ice, like Adelie and Gentoo penguins, feed mostly on krill because it's the most abundant and easiest prey to catch. Species that live farther from the ice, like king and emperor penguins, have a more varied diet, relying more on fish and squid that are drawn to the cold, nutrient-rich waters. And then you have the Galapagos penguins, who have no access to krill at all. They feast on tropical fish and small cephalopods. A penguin has to be an opportunist. It eats what it can catch. But here's the most critical part of the story. Krill isn't just food. It's a powerful symbol of how closely penguin survival is tied to ice. Krill find shelter and feed on algae growing on the underside of the seasonal sea ice. When there's plenty of ice, the krill population thrives. When the ice declines, the entire food web begins to feel the strain. This is how climate change is hitting penguins so hard. It's not just about rising air temperatures. It's about disrupting their access to their main food source. In recent decades, we've seen a significant reduction in seasonal sea ice in some parts of Antarctica, and as a result, krill populations have plummeted. This has a direct and devastating impact on penguin colonies, especially for specialists like the Adelie penguin. When krill becomes scarce, penguins are forced to swim farther and longer in search of food, burning precious energy. And if there isn't enough food during the crucial breeding season, their chicks simply don't survive. A penguin's diet isn't just a menu, it's a daily struggle to maintain balance in an ecosystem that is changing faster than ever before. On one hand, penguins are exceptional hunters, perfectly specialized for their environments. On the other hand, that very specialization makes them dangerously sensitive to climate shifts. Every degree of warming, every reduction in sea ice cover, every season with less krill directly threatens their survival. It may seem like penguins eat something as simple as krill, but in reality, that tiny crustacean is one of the most important threads in the tapestry of life in Antarctica. To understand the fate of penguins, we have to look not just at the birds themselves, but at what lies beneath the ice, the very ice that is both their greatest ally and their fastest disappearing resource. Now, let's turn to one of nature's grandest spectacles: penguin reproduction. It's a process that reveals the extraordinary strategies that can emerge under the most extreme conditions. For these birds, land isn't their daily home, but it is absolutely essential for bringing the next generation into the world. Most species form colonies, huge, bustling gatherings of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of individuals. They come together to collectively protect their young while still maintaining their own personal space. A colony is more than just a safe place. It's a living, breathing organism. A constant stream of sounds, gestures, and even scents allows a penguin to find its partner and its own egg amid a sea of nearly identical silhouettes. Not all penguins build nests in the way we might imagine. Some, like the incredible emperor penguin, have almost entirely abandoned traditional nesting. Their single egg rests directly on the male's feet, kept warm and safe from the frozen ground by a fold of skin and feathers called a brood pouch. Other species, like king or crested penguins, build simple nests from whatever they can find: stones, sand, or seaweed. It's not about decoration. It's about insulation and protecting the egg from rolling away, from floods, or from other birds. Each nest is a tiny fortress with one single goal: survival. The most famous and dramatic role in this story is played by the males, especially the emperor penguin males. During the brutal Antarctic winter, the males take full responsibility for incubating the egg. While the females journey back to the ocean to feed and regain their strength, the males remain on the breeding grounds, holding the egg on their feet for weeks on end in unimaginable cold. Temperatures can plummet below -60 degrees Celsius. Winds can howl at hurricane force, and snow blankets their feathers. Yet, the males stand almost motionless. The egg must survive. During this entire time, the male eats nothing. He relies solely on his fat reserves, becoming the ultimate biological hero of Antarctica's harshest season. When the females finally return, the pair performs a precise and delicate transfer of the egg. The female takes over incubation, and the exhausted male can finally head to the sea to feed. This exchange has to be perfectly synchronized. Any mistake or delay could cost the chick its life. In other species, where the conditions are a bit gentler, parental duties are shared more evenly, but it still requires immense discipline and coordination. Have you ever wondered what goes on inside a bustling penguin colony? It might look like chaos, but it's a world full of fascinating social behaviors. These birds communicate through calls, touch, and gestures to find their own eggs and chicks in a huge crowd of nearly identical neighbors. It's an incredible display of individual recognition in a world that seems visually uniform. Once the chicks finally hatch, they immediately become part of this massive community, learning how to survive from their parents and other adults. Raising chicks is another amazing stage in penguin life, showing just how organized and social these birds can be. When the eggs hatch, the young penguins, just small, fluffy balls of down, are completely dependent on their parents. They can't hunt on their own or stay warm in the extreme cold, so their survival hinges on the precise cooperation of the adults. One of the most fascinating parts of this period is the penguin nursery. In many species, especially those in colonies of thousands, the young gather together while a few adults stand guard. It looks like the chicks started their own preschool, but it's actually a brilliant survival strategy. They huddle together, protecting each other from the cold and predators while their parents go out to sea to hunt for food. Staying in a group massively increases their chances of survival. A chick on its own would be an easy target. These nurseries operate as a dynamic system of shared care. Several adults watch over many chicks, responding to their calls and protecting them from getting trampled or attacked by other birds. For the chicks, this is their first lesson in social life. They learn to recognize their parents' voices, react to danger warnings, and cooperate with their peers. It's a very fragile time, where every single day determines which young birds will survive and which won't. Different species have slightly different strategies. For emperor penguins, born in the extreme cold of Antarctica, nurseries form once the chicks have grown some of their juvenile feathers. Grouping together helps them conserve heat when their parents have to return to the ocean for food. In warmer regions, like for little penguins or Galapagos penguins, nurseries are less about warmth and more about safety from predators like seals or large birds. The nursery stage is also a time for learning and practice. The young watch the adults swim, dive, and hunt. Although their first attempts in the water are often clumsy and chaotic, they learn quickly, mastering the skills they need for an independent life. Instinct and observation work together, preparing them for the demanding ocean environment. Raising chicks shows that penguin life isn't just about individual survival, but about the success of the whole community. The nurseries prove that cooperation and social care are absolutely essential for the species to continue. It's a remarkable example of how nature combines parental instincts with social organization, all to ensure the next generation of penguins can carry on their story. The social behavior of penguins is truly one of the most captivating aspects of their lives. While they might seem loud and disorganized at first glance, their colonies function like highly structured societies where every gesture, call, and signal has a specific meaning. Colonies aren't just for breeding. They are centers of communication, cooperation, and shared defense against threats. The foundation of penguin social life is the colony itself. Hundreds, even thousands of birds packed into a small space create a dynamic web of interactions. In such crowded conditions, being able to recognize your partner and your own chicks among thousands of similar-looking birds is crucial. Penguins use a precise set of tools for this: unique vocalizations, gestures, body posture, and sometimes even scent. Each penguin has a unique vocal fingerprint, allowing it to identify its partner instantly among the crowd. This vocal communication is especially important during the breeding season. Calls cut through the noise of the colony, helping adults locate their eggs or chicks and helping chicks recognize their parents. Beyond sound, penguins also use visual signals, head bobs, flipper waves, and distinct body gestures that can signal a desire to mate, warn of danger, or coordinate movement within the group. It's a complex system that rivals the communication of other highly social animals, like wolves or primates. But cooperation in colonies goes far beyond just communication. Penguins understand the importance of group safety. By staying close together, they protect themselves from extreme cold, wind, and predators. In the coldest parts of Antarctica, the body heat of their neighbors can literally be a matter of life or death. During the harshest freezes, they form tight huddles. Each subtle movement causes a gradual shift throughout the entire group, which helps evenly distribute the burden of enduring the extreme conditions. Furthermore, their social behavior includes cooperation in finding food. In some species, penguins hunt in groups, herding schools of fish so that every bird gets a chance to catch something. Even the nurseries are a form of coordinated social care, where the young gather together while the adults on guard duty minimize the risk of losing any offspring. Across all aspects of their social life, one goal is clear: survival in conditions most animals couldn't tolerate. Colony life, communication, and cooperation are adaptive tools that enable penguins to endure a cold, windy, and unpredictable world. What might look like chaos is actually an intricate system of coordination, where every call, gesture, and movement has meaning and the entire community functions like a single, well-oiled survival machine. Penguin social behavior shows us that in the natural world, individual success often depends on the ability to cooperate and communicate. Extreme conditions only highlight the importance of solidarity and mutual care. It says a lesson in how nature shapes social intelligence and survival strategies in some of the most demanding environments on Earth. But penguin life is far from easy, despite their incredible adaptations. Every dive, every step on land, and even moments of rest are filled with risk. Their world is full of predators, and survival depends on quick reflexes, smart strategy, and precise coordination within the colony. In the water, the dangers are especially serious. Orcas and seals are master hunters of the ocean. Orcas hunt in coordinated groups, using tactics similar to wolves on land. This cooperation allows them to surround groups of penguins and target the weaker or younger ones. Leopard seals are like underwater ninjas, capable of ambushing penguins in complete darkness or from just below the surface of the ice. For young, inexperienced penguins, every dive is a lesson in avoiding predators. For adults, it's a high-stakes game on the edge of life and death. Their defense strategies vary. Gentoo penguins, which dive deep for krill, can perform sudden, sharp turns, changing direction in a fraction of a second. Smaller, more agile species, like little penguins or Galapagos penguins, evade predators with speed and cleverness, often exiting the water in places that are hard for marine mammals to reach. Some groups hunt and travel together, forming living barricades that make it harder for a predator to single out a target. On land, the dangers are different, but just as serious. Depending on the region, predators can include birds like skuas and giant petrels, which attack eggs and chicks, or mammals like foxes on subantarctic islands, or even cats and rats in areas affected by human settlement. Here, the strategy involves protecting offspring within the colonies and in the penguin nurseries, where group safety lowers the risk of losing young. Some species hide their nests in rock crevices, burrows, or under plants to maximize protection. So predators shape penguin life just as much as the climate and food availability. Their speed, reflexes, agility, group strategies, and survival instincts have all evolved in response to pressure from other animals. Every dive, every trip to land, and every hunt is both a challenge and a test of skill. This is why penguins, despite looking clumsy on land, are unmatched masters of survival in the water. It's not a world for the weak. But thanks to cooperation, strategy, and amazing adaptation, penguins have remained one of the most successful groups of animals in the southern hemisphere for millions of years. But when we think about the threats penguins face, it's not just predators or the natural difficulty of finding food. The biggest, most persistent, and most global challenge is climate change. Penguins, although perfectly adapted over millions of years to icy and oceanic environments, are now facing a world that is changing faster than their evolution can keep up with. Melting glaciers, shrinking sea ice cover, and shifting ocean currents don't just affect their daily lives. They directly determine the survival of entire species. For emperor and Adelie penguins in Antarctica, sea ice is everything. They use it as a platform for breeding, molting, and resting. As the ice melts earlier in the spring and forms later in the autumn, their breeding season is cut short. This means chicks might not have enough time to grow their waterproof feathers before the ice breaks up, leading to tragic outcomes. Warmer ocean waters also affect their food supply. Krill and small fish, the main diet for many penguin species, are moving to colder, deeper waters, or their populations are declining. This forces penguins to travel farther and dive deeper to find food, which uses up precious energy and leaves their chicks vulnerable for longer periods. For species like the Galapagos penguin, which already lives on the edge of its temperature tolerance, rising sea temperatures can be devastating, leading to food shortages and breeding failure. Climate change also brings more extreme weather events. Unusually heavy rainfall can flood the nests of ground-nesting species, and severe storms can wipe out entire colonies. Penguins are incredibly resilient, but they are being pushed to their limits. Their incredible adaptations are being challenged by changes that are happening on a global scale. Conservation efforts are underway around the world to protect these amazing birds. Scientists are tracking their populations, studying their behavior, and working to create marine protected areas to safeguard their feeding grounds. But the most important action we can take is to address the root cause: climate change. By reducing our carbon footprint and supporting policies that promote a healthier planet, we can help ensure that penguins continue to thrive. Have you ever wondered what climate change really looks like? It's not just about melting glaciers or rising sea levels. It's happening right now in the struggle of one of the world's most beloved creatures, the penguin. The most immediate and devastating consequence for them is a shortage of food. Imagine this: vast swarms of krill, tiny shrimp-like animals, are the lifeblood of the Antarctic ecosystem. They live under the sea ice, which provides both shelter and a food source: algae growing on its underside. For penguins, these dense krill swarms are like a well-stocked supermarket, making hunting efficient and reliable. But as our planet warms, this crucial sea ice is disappearing. When it melts, the krill swarms break apart and scatter. Suddenly, the penguin supermarket is gone. They're forced to embark on much longer, more exhausting hunts, swimming farther and farther into open, unfamiliar waters. For an adult penguin, this means burning precious energy that they need to survive the harsh conditions. But for their chicks waiting back at the colony, it's a life-or-death situation. When parents can't return with enough food in time, the chicks face malnutrition and starvation. It's a silent tragedy playing out in the world's most remote places. Beyond the food crisis, climate change is literally pulling the ground out from under their feet. Penguin colonies, some of which have thrived for thousands of years in the same spot, are now facing unprecedented instability. These aren't just random patches of snow and rock. They are carefully selected breeding grounds, offering protection from predators and the elements. But now, the very ice shelves and rocky shorelines they depend on are becoming treacherous. In Antarctica, shifting ice boundaries and accelerated melting are causing chaos. Areas that were once solid and safe for nesting are now prone to collapse or flooding from meltwater. Imagine a colony of thousands of penguins, with eggs and newly hatched chicks, suddenly finding their home giving way. On subantarctic islands, where many species breed on rocky shores, rising sea levels and more intense storms are eroding the coastline. Nests that were once high and dry are now being washed away. The result is heartbreaking. Some colonies are shrinking year by year, while others have vanished entirely. A stark example is the Adelie penguin on the Antarctic Peninsula. Over the past few decades, scientists have watched in alarm as their numbers have plummeted, in some areas by more than 50%. This dramatic decline is a direct result of less sea ice and consequently less krill. It's a clear, undeniable signal that the world they evolved to master is changing too fast for them to keep up. So, what do penguins do when their homes become unlivable and their food disappears? They move. They are forced into long, arduous migrations in search of new habitats. Penguins can't just tough it out without food. They have to follow the fish and krill wherever they go. This can mean traveling hundreds of kilometers into completely unknown territories. This is an immense challenge, especially for young penguins who are just learning how to hunt and navigate the vast ocean. But finding a new home isn't easy. A suitable breeding ground needs to be safe from predators, sheltered from the weather, and close to reliable food sources. As you can imagine, prime real estate is limited. When displaced penguins arrive in a new area, they often face intense competition for food and nesting space, not just with other penguin species but sometimes with their own kind. This can lead to increased stress, conflict, and ultimately, higher mortality rates. They are climate refugees, driven from their ancestral homes by a threat they cannot see or fight. While all penguins are feeling the heat, some are in more immediate danger than others. The species most at risk are those with highly specialized lifestyles or those living in very specific, narrow geographic ranges. Take the Galapagos penguin, for instance. It's the only penguin species found north of the equator, living in the warm waters around the Galapagos Islands. They are incredibly sensitive to even slight changes in ocean temperature. During El Niño events, which are becoming more frequent and intense with climate change, warm water pushes the cold, nutrient-rich currents away, causing fish populations to crash. For the Galapagos penguin, this is a catastrophe, and their population has been pushed to the brink of extinction. Then there's the emperor penguin, the icon of Antarctica, famous for its incredible endurance. But even these masters of the ice are not immune. They rely on stable sea ice for their breeding cycle. It's where they lay their eggs and raise their chicks during the brutal Antarctic winter. As this ice becomes less reliable, forming later in the season and breaking up earlier, their entire breeding calendar is thrown into disarray. Chicks may not have enough time to fledge to grow their waterproof feathers before the ice platform they live on disintegrates. We've seen satellite images of entire colonies failing, with thousands of chicks lost because the ice broke up too soon. The cascading effects of climate change create a perfect storm of threats. It's not just one thing. It's everything, all at once. The loss of sea ice doesn't just reduce krill. It also opens up new pathways for land predators. In places where penguins were once protected by surrounding ice, predators like leopard seals or even terrestrial hunters can now more easily access their nesting colonies. This adds yet another layer of pressure on already struggling populations. It's a complex, interconnected web. The temperature of the air affects the ocean, which affects the ice, which affects the krill, which affects the penguins. Every part of their ecosystem is linked, and penguins are one of the most visible victims when that system breaks down. For millions of years, their evolution has perfected them for a life of ice and cold water. But those adaptations are suddenly becoming a liability. Their battle is no longer just against the winter cold or a hungry seal. It's against the global, chronic threat that is rewriting the rules of their world. Every lost colony, every failed breeding season, every desperate migration for food, these aren't isolated incidents. They are dots on a map, connecting to form a global picture of a species in crisis. The future of penguins is now inextricably tied to the future of our planet's climate. Their struggle is a powerful lesson for us about the fragility of even the most resilient ecosystems. The melting ice is more than just a physical change. It's a symbol of a world out of balance. If we continue on our current path, some of these incredible species could disappear within our lifetimes. They will become a story we tell our grandchildren, a memory of a creature that once marched across the ice. Their silent disappearance from the icy landscapes they once defined would be a dramatic and profound reminder that the fate of one species is connected to the fate of us all. The plight of the penguin is a wake-up call, urging us to act before it's too late. Thanks for watching.